Hello and welcome to the programme which looks at the Holy Land. I am Paul Calvert. Psalm 41 verse 13 from the New King James Bible says this: Blessed be the Lord God of Israel, from everlasting to everlasting. Amen and amen. I'm with Tristan Hall from Christian Friends of Israel, and we're talking about 40 years of God's faithfulness. Now, Tristan, how was CFI started 40 years ago?
Well, it was a very international creation from the very beginning. It began here in Jerusalem in this very month 40 years ago, in December 1985. And there were Ray and Sharon Sanders from the States, and a man called Reverend Barry Perez, also from the States, a man from France called Francois Cillier, and there was also Derek White from the UK, and an Australian man as well. So it had this international flavour at the very beginning, and it's continued that way ever since. And they really wanted to do something practical to help what the Lord was doing here in those days. In the 70s and 80s, it seemed that it was such a time of genesis for many ministries and congregations that began, that are still here today in Israel, and a lot of them had their roots in that time. So it was a very fruitful time when things were kind of being born spiritually, and CFI was amongst them. And for CFI, the overriding impotence was to do something, was to pray, yes, to pray, because nothing here happens without prayer, but it was also to actually do practical deeds and acts of loving kindness to support the regathering and strengthening of Israel that was going on then, and is still ongoing ever since. And so that's where the projects began. I
imagine the mood towards Christians has changed over the years.
Absolutely, and that's one of the things that we can really give thanks to the Lord for. And when we've been celebrating and giving thanks for the 40 years over the last couple of months, and that was really something that we wanted to do, was not give any credit to anybody or to the ministry. We haven't really, it's been all the Lord, what he's been doing over these past 40 years. It's been incredible, the reconciliation that's taken place during that time. Even about 20 years ago, when I first came, things weren't where they are today. You would still encounter, one would still encounter as a Christian people that were frosty and mistrustful and couldn't understand why we were here. So, of course, we were so pleased to meet people like that. For example, there was one out in a rural area past Hebron, and we were delivering large electrical appliances to support them. They had very little. A lot of them are living in trailers. And they received us with gladness until the point that we said, they assumed that we were Jewish. And when we said that, no, we're Christian, the man that I was dealing with, he just completely froze. His countenance changed. And he said, oh, well, I don't think I can receive these gifts from you. So Leon and I, we spoke to him a little bit about Teshuvah and redemption, and why we had come, why we were here, that we weren't here to hurt or to harm or to force them to do anything, but we were just here as an act of contrition, really, in some small way to make amends for the past, if one ever could. And he thought about it he paused. There was some silence for about half a minute while he pondered it, and then he said, I will accept these gifts, but I can only accept them on behalf of myself. I can't accept them on behalf of those that went before me. So we met him where he was, and we continued from there. But, the relationship began to blossom, and over the course of months he began calling, and when he needed something he would turn to us for help. And it was the start of a friendship. But now, especially since the war, less and less and less do we encounter people like this. And the difference that I hear from the pioneers like Sharon, people that were here in the 80s, and the difficulties they had in melting a lot of the hardness that existed between Christians and Jews in those days. And the difference between then and now is stark. And so, yes, we really rejoice for all of that melting and that reconciliation and the beautiful friendships that have been established, the Naomi-Ruth relationships that have come forth over 40 years is a testament to what the Lord has done.
Now, recently, you became the new leader of CFI. Has that been a big responsibility?
Oh, yes, absolutely. It was a privilege of my life and so much joy. Yes, it's a challenge, but a joy to work here with people that, to me, they're like gold, the people that the Lord sends, because we are dependent on the Lord to send us our team, where it's vastly volunteer-based, and that way we're able to give away most of the funds that are raised, and that's what we love to do. And it also gives, the wonderful thing about working with volunteers predominantly is that it enables people from the nations to come and to give their life as a sacrifice to the Lord and in service of God, and to serve the Jewish people, which gives so many people such joy to know that they're part in some small way of what God is doing here in this time. So it's a privilege, it's a wonder, it's a marvel. It's sometimes tiring, but it's worth it.
What have you done special to celebrate 40 years?
We had a whole week of Thanksgiving and celebrations here in Jerusalem about 4 or 5 weeks ago, and our international representatives came from many countries, and some of them have been faithfully interceding, praying, raising funds, advocating for Israel and CFI for almost since the beginning, some of them since the beginning. And they are phenomenal people. And there's some newer ones too. So it was a great time for us to meet together. In fact, we hadn't had so many meet all together at once for many years. So it was a joy. We had our annual general meeting, and then we took a day to go exploring all over Israel. But it wasn't a tour as such. We went and met people, friends actually, that we had helped, that the ministry had helped, particularly since the war. A lot of people spoke to us and shared with us about how it had affected their lives. We could see where they were living, what they needed still in the future, how they benefited. We met soldiers. We went to a military base. We went to Kibbutzim. It was a wonderful day, impactful. I mean, everyone that came was, they were pretty tired by the end of it. We left at 7, we got back about 11:30. And then we had a wonderful Thanksgiving evening at Christchurch, which is like spiritual home for many. It's a special place, and that was a wonderful evening. Again, Jewish friends came and shared, but it was really a time of thanking the Lord. It wasn't a mutual backslapping time. It was really a time to thank God for what He has done and what He will do.
What sort of countries did the reps come from? Are they from all over the world?
Yeah, there was a good cross-section. The States and Canada and Mexico, and countries in Europe that came were the Netherlands, Germany, France, Switzerland, Italy. Obviously the UK, of course, is from the beginning. Reps from South Africa came, and there were some others. Yeah, it was a great melting pot, people that came in from different parts of the world. We managed to get by with our lingua franca, always English, I'm afraid, but there was a few translations going on in the background.
Has it been a challenge leading CFI during this time of war, and have you had to adapt because of the war?
Yes. One of the things that happened was, well, firstly to say, just to honour the team, we only lost one person when the war did break out, and that was really because this person's mother had a nervous breakdown. I think she was got a nervous lady anyway, so that person had to go. But everybody else stayed, and for many of us it was a stretch. People cope with things like that in different ways, and that's normal. So some were more affected than others, but everybody was pretty stoic. And actually I would say that they leaned into the Lord, they leaned into their faith, and He gave them the strength that they needed. There was a bit of a time lag, and some people's natural term of service came to an end. So we all had to kind of put all hands to deck, including me, and we were all busy doing practical tasks, buying, delivering, taking stuff to army bases, driving across the country, taking things to displaced families, and I enjoyed being part of that as much as everybody else. If anything, it was difficult not to do it more than I did, because when I lived here years ago, I was very much in the community all the time. So I loved to be part of that. But then it was amazing. The Lord just seemed to bring people in, more and more and more and more applicants. I think once people realised what was really going on, after the initial shock, people began to apply, Christians from the nations, in greater and greater numbers, and that's continued until today. There's so many people applying, and we just thank the Lord. Great people as well, people with skills and talents and gifts to contribute. So I think part of my role is to help facilitate those people coming in, finding the right niches and just shining in what they have to give.
Now, being leader of CFI, you get great opportunities. So you just met Mike Huckabee yesterday. Oh
yes, such a privilege to meet Ambassador Huckabee. He was a very friendly man, very helpful, and he's a very caring man, I would say. And we were so pleased to meet with him, and that he spent the time that he did with us and to work with us.
I imagine over the last 40 years, things have had to change and develop. We've seen social media come on the scenes and get ready for social media and all those things. Do you think there's going to be new changes for the next 40 years?
How long have we got? Well, the Lord knows. We'll keep going as long as we can. That's our goal. I mean, there's many people already, even for years, that have been prepping and shoring things up, hunkering down, and I don't knock anyone that's doing that, as long as they're doing what they feel the Lord has called them to do and not responding in fear. For us here, those of us that have assembled here, I would say that we've felt that the Lord hasn't opened the door for us to take that route, that He's calling us to endure and to keep contending in this space and for what we're doing and for this cause as long as we can. Change, other than the Lord, that they say that the only certainty is change, and there will be lots of changes, let alone the next 40 years, probably even in the next 5 years or so. But we keep going as long as we can. And yes, it's true, the media scape is completely different to what it was when we were younger, Paul. And CFI, never been not a showy ministry, and it wasn't called to be. So it's very much grassroots, working with people who are maybe not people that are known. They're just regular Joes. And we're so grateful to the support base and the intercessors that the Lord has provided. They've been an absolute amazing support. We couldn't be here without them. So a lot of the feedback we give in the media space is to feedback to people who are praying. And that's the best of all, because it's the prayers that make the difference. It's the prayers that make the difference. It's the prayers that really make a huge difference to what goes on here. But we do want to be part of the contending for space in the online arena as well for truth. And there's so much untruth that's being told, and we've all seen it since the war. It's been so terribly regretful seeing Christian people some of whom were previously supporters of Israel, having their world turned upside down, so to speak, and believing lies, believing deceits, and that's been a terrible sadness. And we have to work to keep standing for truth, and we're committed to doing that.
Now, can people become volunteers today? If they're listening to this message and they want to become a volunteer, can they become a volunteer today?
That's right, yeah. They absolutely can. The window is open, and we don't know how long for. But at the moment, people can travel, people can volunteer, they can get a passport, and they can come. And there is a cost of living crisis that's gnawing and gradually growing in the world, but it hasn't reached crisis point yet. So if people have it in their hearts to come, then I would encourage them to earnestly seek the Lord and to follow what He says, and not to be intimidated by the challenges, whether they be financial or time or the need to prepare for the future, because we have today. We don't know exactly what tomorrow will look like, but we have today. So now is the time. If somebody has such a call, and it says in the Proverbs, a longing fulfilled is a tree of life, and it's so life-giving to live and walk out something that the Lord is calling and the Lord is birthing, rather than reaching later life with regrets for things that were not done.
What is your prayer for the next 40 years for Christian Friends of Israel?
We don't want to look back. We're giving thanks to the Lord for all that He's done over these past 40 years, but we don't want to look back with any nostalgia, because we know there's still so much more that He wants to do. The ministry's not over. It's not finished yet, and Israel's not finished yet. There's so much that the Lord is still doing here. We also don't want to look forwards, because how arrogant of us to presume that we know anything that's going to happen in the future other than what we're told in the Scriptures. But we really want to be looking up and to seek the Lord for His counsel. We feel that it's a time for us as a ministry where we have to, 40 years is steeped in significance in the Scriptures. Yeshua's ministry was bookended by a 40 days and nights of fasting, and also another 40-day period after He arose until He ascended. But we've been dwelling a lot on the time when Joshua went over the River Jordan and into the next season. And so we feel that for us as a ministry, we're crossing into a new season by the Lord's grace. And my prayer is that we will look up to the Lord to receive His instruction like Joshua did, and be bold and courageous, and go and do it.
What's your website for people who'd like to know more about the work that you do?
CFIJerusalem.org. So we're Christian Friends of Israel, but the website is CFIJerusalem.org.
Okay, Tristan, thank you very much for sharing today.
Thank you, Paul, as always.
Thank you for joining us today. Pray that God will move by his mighty power in the Holy Land and bring his peace.